On March 6, 1944, at 23,000 feet over Germany, a B-17 flying fortress named Hell's Fury pushed deep into enemy airspace when 12 Messerschmitt Bf 109s formed up behind it, preparing a textbook attack from 6 o'clock high. Standard procedure said retreat and fire defensively. Training said conserve ammunition. Common sense said stay alive. But Staff Sergeant Michael "Mad Mike" Donovan, the tail gunner, chose something else entirely. In the next 4 minutes, all 12 German fighters fell from the sky. The bomber formation suffered 0 casualties, and every gunner in the 8th Air Force learned a new word: aggression. Donovan, raised in South Boston, where survival meant hitting first, had never believed in waiting. By 17, he had survived dozens of street fights, and when Pearl Harbor came, he demanded gunnery school, despite instructors calling him reckless and suicidal, answering simply that dead gunners don't shoot back. Assigned to the 390th Bomb Group in England, he volunteered for the most lethal position on a bomber after the previous tail gunner requested transfer, telling his pilot he'd take the odds because he didn't wait to be shot. On earlier missions, he broke Doctrine by firing at enemy fighters before they committed to attack runs, forcing them to scatter and trading ammunition for lives. Then refined the tactic further by targeting wingmen instead of leaders, collapsing entire formations in seconds. Studying German attack patterns, Donovan realized American gunners were trained to react while the enemy controlled timing, so he flipped the equation. On the Augsburg mission, with heavy losses expected, he opened fire at extreme range the moment the fighters formed up, shattering their cohesion before the attack even began, intimidating experienced pilots into hesitation, and finally luring a veteran wingman into closing distance before unleashing a concentrated 3-second barrage that tore the Bf 109 apart mid-air. By the time the smoke cleared, Donovan had rewritten the rules of bomber defense, proving that the most dangerous position on a flying fortress could become its deadliest weapon, not through caution, but through controlled, deliberate aggression. Pieces tumbled earthward. "Good kill," the radio operator confirmed, but Donovan didn't celebrate because the remaining 11 fighters were already regrouping, and now they understood the tail position was lethal. They adjusted immediately, splitting into 2 attack elements, 6 fighters driving straight in from 6 o'clock and 5 swinging wide from 7, the textbook counter to aggressive defense, dividing a gunner's attention. Donovan had anticipated this. He ignored the 7 o'clock threat entirely, called it out for the waist gunners, and poured everything into the 6 o'clock group, killing the lead fighter in the first burst, watching it explode, then snapping instantly to the next leader and killing that one too, collapsing the formation in seconds. In under 30 seconds, 3 Bf 109s fell, and the remaining fighters didn't reposition or probe again. They fled outright from a single tail gun. Donovan checked his ammo, 1,200 rounds gone, 800 left, enough for one real fight. 15 minutes later, the Germans returned with 18 fighters, attacking from every stern quarter at once, 6, 7, 5, 4 o'clock. Overwhelming force designed to saturate defensive fire. Standard doctrine said spread fire and pray. Donovan chose violence. He ignored everything except the direct 6 o'clock attack, locking on to the lead fighter at maximum effective range and using all 7 seconds of closure time to walk tracers into its flight path, forcing the pilot to hold course until the canopy shattered and the aircraft rolled away in pieces. With 3 seconds left before impact, Donovan shifted instinctively to the next fighter and fired where physics said it had to be, not where it was, detonating the engine in a fireball so violent the remaining attackers broke formation instantly and ran. Donovan reloaded his final belt, 400 rounds left, and the mission was only halfway done. As they pushed toward Augsburg, the Germans changed tactics again, shadowing just beyond gun range, waiting, calling reinforcements, and Whitmore knew what that meant. 10 minutes later, radar lit up. 36 more fighters inbound, combined with the 12 already stalking them. 48 enemy aircraft against a single drifting bomber with no escort and no formation support. Donovan checked his ammo. 380 rounds. The math was hopeless unless he rewrote it again. He asked for permission to attack the formation before it finished organizing, knowing he'd burn his remaining ammunition in seconds, knowing defensive doctrine guaranteed death at 20-to-1 odds. Whitmore paused, then agreed, warning he'd write a very angry letter if this got them killed. Donovan didn't answer. The German fighters were 2,000 yards out, still aligning attack vectors, still vulnerable. He opened fire, not controlled bursts, not suppressive fire, just pure disruption, aimed at destroying coordination before the assault could even begin. Donovan unleashed a maximum sustained barrage, dumping 200 rounds into the heart of the enemy formation in 8 seconds, not aiming at aircraft, but at the space where coordination lived, where discipline held formations together. And the effect was instant and catastrophic. Tracers ripped through the core, one Bf-109 ignited and spiraled down, 2 more collided while trying to evade, and 48 fighters exploded outward in pure chaos, with no attack plan left, just survival. Whitmore didn't finish the sentence because he didn't need to. Everyone saw it. One tail gunner had shattered the largest fighter assault they'd ever witnessed, but Donovan knew he'd only bought time, maybe 2 minutes, and he had 180 rounds left. 90 seconds later, the Germans regrouped and abandoned tactics entirely. 12 fighters swarming straight in from 6 o'clock, with brute force alone. And Donovan didn't target the nearest or the loudest. He fired into the psychological center of the pack, 30-round bursts ripping through 3 aircraft, 1 exploding, 2 smoking out, while cannon fire hammered Hell's Fury and metal screamed, but the guns never stopped. At 400 yards, another fighter died, then another, then 2 more at point-blank range close enough to see faces, until the last 3 broke off at 100 yards, and Donovan squeezed the trigger one final time. Nothing. The guns were dry. 180 rounds in 45 seconds, 6 kills in that last engagement, and now he was defenseless. The Germans regrouped again, 27 aircraft left, and this time they attacked from 6 o'clock, low, slow, and methodical, execution by Doctrine. But Donovan had one weapon left: psychology. He tracked the lead fighter perfectly with empty guns, held the sight steady as if loaded, and the German pilot broke instinctively, dragging the entire formation with him, the reputation of those guns turning emptiness into a phantom threat. They disengaged completely, having lost 21 fighters to 1 bomber, and Hell's Fury flew on alone, bombed Augsburg, and returned home untouched as word spread through German radios to avoid that aircraft at all costs. Back at Framlingham, the ground crew counted 47 bullet holes, 13 cannon strikes, cracked control surfaces, and every ammunition box empty. And when asked why he fired every round, Donovan answered simply that he didn't have enough to waste any. 12 confirmed kills, 4 probables, 3 damaged, and within 24 hours, every tail gunner, pilot, and commander in the 8th Air Force wanted to know how he'd done it, until headquarters arrived and asked for an explanation, and Donovan gave them a doctrine-shattering answer. Don't wait, don't react, attack first, break coordination, and turn fear into a weapon before the enemy ever gets a chance to fire. Anderson listened without interrupting, then asked a single question: could this be taught to the right men? Donovan answered honestly that not everyone had the temperament, that it required gunners who thought like fighters, who saw opportunity instead of danger, and preferred attacking to waiting. And Anderson ordered him to find those men, authorizing an immediate special training program and reassigning Donovan to transform tail gunnery tactics across the entire 8th Air Force. Donovan hesitated, saying he wanted to stay with his crew, but Anderson cut him off, explaining that his crew was alive because of what he had done, while thousands of others were dying because they didn't know it, and the choice between 9 men and 9,000 made itself. Donovan accepted and spent the next month creating what became known as the Donovan Doctrine, aggressive tail gunnery built on 5 principles. Seize initiative by engaging fighters during formation rather than waiting for attack. Use psychological warfare to intimidate and disrupt rather than merely destroy. Focus fire on the most dangerous sector instead of dividing attention. Treat ammunition aggressively because prevention costs less than reaction, and accept individual risk to reduce collective loss. The doctrine met fierce resistance from traditional instructors and commanders who called it reckless and suicidal, but the numbers were undeniable. Tail gunner casualty rates dropped from 38% in March 1944 to 23% by June 1944, and German fighter attack completion rates fell from 52% to 27% as aggressive fire shattered coordination before attacks could even begin. The psychological impact spread quickly, with German radio intercepts warning pilots away from bombers known to employ aggressive gunners, turning reputation itself into a weapon. Between March and August 1944, Donovan trained 300 tail gunners in an intensive program focused as much on mindset as marksmanship, repeating his core belief that fear comes from reacting, while confidence comes from acting first, though nearly a third of candidates washed out, unable to abandon defensive instincts or accept the risk calculus.
Those who graduated became disproportionately lethal and survivable, accounting for nearly half of all tail gunner kills in the European theater and forcing the Luftwaffe to rewrite its own training manuals with a simple recommendation: avoid aggressive American bombers and find easier targets. Donovan never flew another combat sortie after March 6th, spending the rest of the war training others, but conservative estimates credit his doctrine with saving 300 bombers and 3,000 airmen, its compounding effect reshaping the air war by turning fear itself into an offensive weapon long after his guns fell silent.
After the war, military historians studied Donovan's tactics, and the principle of aggressive defense quietly entered aerial combat doctrine across multiple nations, including Britain, the Soviet Union, and even post-war German analysis, which openly acknowledged its effectiveness. And the concept spread beyond bombers to fighter escorts, ground attack aircraft, and naval aviation wherever defensive positions existed. Donovan himself returned to Boston, worked construction, and never spoke about the war. When journalists found him in the 1960s, he refused interviews, saying only that he did what needed doing and that 300 other gunners were the real story. One of them, Thomas Bailey, later explained the difference Donovan made. Before him, survival meant hiding, conserving, making yourself small. Mike taught us survival meant making the enemy afraid to attack you, and that changed everything. The numbers proved it. 8th Air Force analysis in 1945 showed bomber losses dropping from 14 per thousand sorties before aggressive gunner doctrine to 8 per thousand afterward, a 43% reduction against the same targets and defenses, and captured German records confirmed why. Luftwaffe after-action reports from summer 1944 repeatedly cited American gunners opening fire during formation phases, disrupting coordination through psychological pressure, and recommending avoidance of direct stern attacks, a counter that proved difficult to implement and often failed against aggressive waist and ball gunners using the same principles. By August 1944, German fighter effectiveness against American bombers had fallen 63% compared to January levels, and internal Luftwaffe analysis attributed more than a quarter of that decline directly to aggressive gunner tactics. Donovan never knew these numbers, never saw the enemy's reports, never understood the full reach of his influence. He died in 1998 at 76, his obituary mentioning construction work, family, and a single vague line about wartime service, omitting 12 kills in 4 minutes, 300 gunners trained, and 3,000 lives saved. His funeral was quiet: family, 2 old war buddies, no honor guard. Yet the gunners knew, gathering the night before in a South Boston bar to raise glasses to the man who taught them to shoot first. Bailey, now in his 70s, summed it up simply: Mike Donovan never thought he was special, but his job saved thousands. Every bomber that made it home, every crew that survived because the enemy broke off, every mission that succeeded because fear worked both ways. The Donovan Doctrine remains embedded in modern combat training today, from pilots to defensive systems built around early disruption, because on March 6, 1944, in 4 minutes of fire, one tail gunner proved that survival doesn't come from hiding, it comes from making the enemy too afraid to fight. Michael Donovan fired 2,000 rounds, destroyed 12 aircraft, saved 3,000 lives, and changed warfare forever. Not because he was extraordinary, but because he refused to wait for death to find him and went hunting first. If this story moved you, like and subscribe to help preserve these histories. Tell us where you're watching from, and remember the names of the men who made it home because someone else stood their ground.